Welcome everyone to episode 4 of Whaddya Say with DDJ. As always, I'm your host DDJ. Thanks again to everybody who's taken the time out of their day to listen to the first 3 episodes, which are available on most major podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I really appreciate the love and the feedback that I continue to get from you guys, and it makes me want to keep going on with this project. I'm going to get right into it. My guest this week is Frank Rodriguez, a very good friend of mine for almost 20 years. If you've ever gone to an independent show in the Chicagoland area, or heck, if you've gone to any wrestling show or sporting event in the Chicago area, you've probably ran into this guy because he's been everywhere. He is going to talk about what it was like, venturing through the independent scene in Chicago, and I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 4 of Whaddya Say with DDJ with my guest this week, Frank Rodriguez. Welcome everyone to episode 4 of Whaddya Say with DDJ. With me today is Frank Rodriguez. Frank is, if good, the thing about Frank is that if you've been to an independent show in the Chicagoland area sometime in the 2000s, most likely you've ran into Frank. Frank, first off, before we begin, I just want to thank you for the almost 20 years of good friendship.
Man, Dennis, it first of all, thank you for having me on. And like I said, as I've told you many times, you're good people, and it's always been awesome to chat with you and talk with you at the wrestling shows, man.
I appreciate that. So let's get right into it. How did Frank Rodriguez become a wrestling fan?
A wrestling fan, wow. Well, you're going to have to rewind all the way back into the 70s, showing my age. Went to the amphitheater in Chicago at the old stockyards there. And I saw Nick Bockwinkel and Vern Gagne, I believe, was the main event, and and I was hooked ever since. I mean, I just thought these guys were larger than life. But when I really dove into the wrestling business was when a tag team from Chicago, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, were beating up Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher, and everyone there was, to see the Bruiser and Crusher beat up the Road Warriors. And I'm like, well, they're getting their ass kicked, so I don't want to be like them. I want to be like those guys. And Animal and Hawk, just you want to talk about cartoon characters coming to life. I mean, that's captured my mind, and the rest is history.
Awesome. So obviously you kind of partially answered my first question, who are a couple of your early favorites? And I know because you and I, one of the first times we hung out really was when I think it was Hawk and Paul Ellering were at it's an Old Country buffet, and we all had breakfast with them. And it's one of the highlights of my life and stuff. And I know you played a big role in allowing me to be a part of that, so I thank you for that. But besides the Road Warriors, who else were some of your favorites?
Oh, man, right away, the Freebirds come to mind. Terry Gordy is absolutely one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I just think as far as a big man goes, he sold so well for everybody else. I mean, Ric Flair, I wanted to be Ric Flair growing up. Thank God, knowing that what we know about Ric Flair, I didn't turn out to be like Ric Flair. But that doesn't take away from his accomplishments in the ring. And man, I mean, the Von Erichs and Freebirds, that feud just captivated me as a kid. Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, obviously. I mean, I thought that was just amazing TV. And, the one thing I loved about wrestling back then that does not happen now, first, a couple things. One, it was an hour programming. Two, the main event would go off the air before it was finished. So you had to tune in the next week to find out what happened in that main event. So I absolutely love the way they did the TV back then. And man, you want to talk about hook, line, and sinker, Dennis? Woo! I was hooked.
Yeah, I remember. Used to be, at the end of shows, Tony Schiavone was like, "Tune in next week," and he had that "tune in next week," like the genuine excitement, like you have to tune in. And yeah, I would agree with you. That is definitely a lost art, and especially when it comes to today's wrestling. So again,
I want one story. One NWA story that pissed me off to no end when I was younger was the Great American Bash. It was Hawk versus Ric Flair. They just showed the entrance, and Tony Schiavone says, "Now you see it, and now you don't, folks, because we gotta go." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" That was the worst thing that could have happened to me as a kid, was them going off the air. I was so mad. And then the following week, they didn't show what happened, and and back then there was no internet, so you had to wait for wrestling magazines. And so, yeah, I'll never forget that. Now you see it, now you don't, because we got to go. Oh, man, was I mad.
So when did you decide, you wanted to take the next step from just becoming just a fan to actually getting involved in the business? What was the one, what prompted that?
Well, I always loved it. I mean, I'm a staunch defender of the business. I think what wrestlers do is second to none. Being able to tell a story in the ring, with being as physical as they are, with the illusion of, making it look real, that they're killing one another, and that's what great athletes or great wrestlers can do. What got me into the business was actually a mutual friend of ours, the Shot to the Top, the manager extraordinaire, P.L. Myers.
Mm-hmm.
We always ended up running into each other at the same events, whether it was football, XFL, NFL, wrestling. I always ran into P.L. Myers. He had a TV show that he was always filming. And I would always yell, "P.L. Myers sucks," and that's, believe it or not, to a wrestler, that's a compliment. So that's how we became friends. And PCW was splitting up from PWI at the time and starting their own Fed, PCW. And on 6/23/01, that was my very first independent wrestling show. That's the night Jimmy Blaze pinned the Sandman. And man, I just knew I wanted to be involved somehow, whether it was ring announcing, doing color commentating, managing, in the ring. I mean, I trained to be a wrestler and realized, you know what, this shit hurts, Dennis. You know what, I like my body in one piece, so I'm gonna stick to the announce table or ring announcing or managing. But getting in there and taking bumps repeatedly is not for me. And the final step for me was when the Road Warriors put me through a table at one of the Dream Nights, and it was on the concrete, and I didn't tuck my chin, and my head just cracked the back of the concrete, and I was concussed. And had no idea what I was doing, where I was going. I was supposed to lay there, dead. And I got right back up and just sort of staggered diagonally to the locker room. And when I got back there, I don't know if you know Big Jack John Burke.
Yes, very well.
Yeah, he was waiting for me behind the curtain. He goes, "That was great, Frankie. That was great." And I'm like, "When do I go out?" He's like, oh, you might want to sit down right there.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't even know that I had been picked up and choke slammed and threw a table onto the concrete. I was waiting for my cue, and thankfully John Burke said, "Yeah, just grab a seat right there." And that was the last like real bump I ever took. I never, I took little bumps in the ring here and there, but never anything extreme like that.
Gotcha. That had to have been, I want to say, the first one because I was there for the second Dream Night with the Road Warriors, and I don't remember that happening. So it had to have been the first one and stuff. So,
Well,
but
I don't remember what Dream Night it was. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it was the one where CIA was wrestling the Road Warriors versus Flyboy TK and Tony Scarpone. I was dressed up in the Old Country Buffet B outfit. Because Jim Jesus, God rest his soul, rest in peace. A good friend of mine. He was the heel manager, and he had turned on me. So the way I could get to him was dressed up in that B outfit, and I took the helmet off, and I couldn't believe the crowd popped. When they saw it was me. I felt at that time, who the hell am I? And I was like, no one's gonna react or pop, and John Burke was right on the money when he said, no, the crowd's gonna know, they're following along, trust me. So I took off the B head and hit Jim Jesus in the back with the chair. And I'm sorry, I said it was the Road Warriors that chokeslammed me. It was actually the CIA.
okay.
Chicano, they're the ones that chokeslammed me, Diablo and Damien, through the, actually I think it was a door, because their manager was Mr. Puerta or something. I don't know. It's not, dude, it's all foggy, but yeah, that's I don't know if that was one or two, but it was either one of those.
Wow. So obviously, you had a lot of jobs and stuff in the wrestling business. Can you go into detail about like all the different jobs you had, and then maybe after that, like which one you enjoyed the most and which one you enjoyed the least?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they all have pluses and minuses for sure. But in PCW, I was a manager. I did color commentating, did a little ring announcing, got my ass kicked a few times in the ring as a quote unquote wrestler. I never claimed to be a wrestler, but I was in the ring, so I guess I got to say it. And then we left PCW and created AAW. That was Tony Scarpone, Flyboy TK, Big Jack John Burke, Steve Powell, and myself. So we split off from PCW and became an owner, and did some ring announcing for AAW, and continued with the color commentating. I just love color commentating, man. The color, at that time, in indie shows had, an announce table, and the crowd could hear you live as you were talking. So you could get a storyline over really fast that way. Now, if you weren't any good, you just annoy the hell out of the crowd. But I mean, knowing the storylines and being able to get them over, live, was really cool. And then, I really got burned out in AAW. There was really too many chiefs, not enough Indians. There was 5 owners, and then the owners all started fighting with one another, and they couldn't agree on anything. So I brought Jim Jesus over to AAW. My connection with Mancow in that show with Turd and Al Roker Jr. I'm the one that ushered them, into PCW, and then into AAW. And I just told them that I was burned out and I don't want to do it anymore. And I believe Jim Jesus took over for me. They bought me out. And then Danny Daniels took over, and everyone, went their own ways. And Flyboy TK retired, and Big Jack John Burke retired. And I think Steve Powell sued Tony Scarpone, the first of many people to sue Tony. From there I retired. Man, I was gone out of the sport for about 3 years, then came back to Pro Wrestling Blitz. And Tony had called me up and said, hey, can you help me with this promotion that first I think it was called Wrestling Underground or something like that. I said, well, that's your first mistake. Get rid of that stupid name. And so he did, and we came up with Blitz. And Blitz, I did some color commentating, some ring announcing, but I was more behind the scenes. Started doing the storylines. It's the first time I started doing storylines for wrestling, and I thoroughly enjoy telling stories, man. When it comes to the things I enjoyed the most, it's storylines. And we started with something called WrestleFest, and we drew 700 people for WrestleFest, the initial WrestleFest. And WrestleFest 2, we drew probably about the same thing, 700. We went all the way to WrestleFest 8, which was probably our greatest card. But the card that drew the most was WrestleFest 5, when we packed 2,800 people into a gymnasium in Joliet, and the gymnasium forgot to turn on the air conditioning. And when I tell you it was hell, brother. We got so many complaints, and it wasn't our fault, but 2,800 people. That is something, even if Blitz isn't around anymore, and maybe I don't talk to Tony anymore, that's something that I'll never forget. And when the old expression is, they're hanging from the rafters. Mm-hmm. Well, in gymnasiums, they got those bleachers, so you push them all the way up against the wall, and they're super tall. People had climbed on top of those bleachers and were watching the show from on top of the bleachers. We oversold the building. So it was that was a great night. I left Blitz on bad terms with Tony Scarpone. He I won't go into what he did, but there's a reason why Pro Wrestling Blitz isn't around anymore, and why he's continuously been sued by people. And I went to BCW, and the owners there told me that they'll give me carte blanche to write storylines and book my talent. And for me, the utmost important for Berwyn Championship Wrestling was not just to have local guys, but not to have guys from all over the United States. I wanted Midwest, so I conscientiously booked people from Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Michigan. I wanted the Midwest to be represented with a bunch of guys here in Chicago. And, there was 3 guys. If I was going to start working for BCW, I had to have. One was Shogun Chris Logan. Mm-hmm. Number 2 was Vic Capri. And number 3 was Egotistico Fantastico. I had to have those guys if I was gonna do this, and I didn't know if they were gonna side with me because of what happened at Blitz. And luckily for me, they all know who the bad guy was in that scenario, and they came aboard. And man, I had a great run at BCW, but again, I burned out, Dennis, and left. And you know what? And I'm okay with it right now.
Well, that's the most important thing, as long as you're at peace with the decision you made and stuff. So I want to go back real quick. You mentioned about, I think it was WrestleFest 5 drawing 2,800 people in the gymnasium inside Joliet. What was it that, brought the crowd? Did you bring anybody in, or was it a big match you're promoting that, the fans wanted to see? Just explain a little bit more of that, what you guys did to have been able to draw that many people.
So first of all, it was promotion. We had billboards, we had street signs, we had we had our cars laminated with our WrestleFest 5 Blitz logos, and we really the conscientious decision to promote it is what put it over. Mm-hmm. Now, did we bring people in? You're damn right. That was a WWE Hall of Fame roster, all in one card. We had, and I'm going to forget some people. We literally had about 20 WWE wrestlers there. But we could start with DDP, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, X-Pac, Kurt Angle, Lisa Marie Varon, oh man, Hottie, Brian Christopher, United Too Cool, man, Sabu, Abyss, yeah, man, it was a loaded card, and all those guys, other than Scott Steiner, were terrific to work for or work with, and we're very cordial, and we're there to happy to put people over that need to be put over. You know, everyone was happy except for Scott Steiner. You know, he's just a miserable cuss. But
well, we won't go there then and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Eric Bischoff at that show too?
No, he was at WrestleFest 7.
Okay.
That's when we brought in the NWO, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Eric Bischoff, along with the Dudley Boys.
That's right. So, okay, so what is your favorite thing about independent wrestling in the Chicago area, would you say?
My favorite thing, I love guys who are willing to not think of themselves as these giant prima donna superstars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was very careful with who I brought into my locker room at BCW because at Blitz we did deal with a lot of divas. I won't mention names, but a lot of them were divas. And at BCW, I was very, very careful with who I brought in. I wanted guys who understood wrestling storylines, that knew that it wasn't just I have to get all my stuff in because I'm not coming back next show. You know, I was very careful not to book guys like that. I wanted guys to know that I'm bringing you in show after show after show. I'm telling a story. So you don't need to do every single flip that you know how to do in one match. And I was very much on top of that as the booker. Like Shogun Chris Logan's finishing move was the super kick. Guess what? No one else on that card used the super kick. And in this era of wrestling that everyone super kicks 1,000 times in a match, when Shogun hit the super kick, it just seemed that much more devastating because you didn't see it 100 times in a show.
Agreed.
You know, so it's just the importance of knowledge, of understanding what the promoter's trying to get across. Guys that didn't understand that, Dennis, they didn't come back the next show because they didn't listen to what was expected of them. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. If they went off on their own and did what they wanted to do, they didn't come back. You know, since we're talking about BCW and it's a little off topic, but I want to give Jay Bradley a ton of credit because in that locker room, in my locker room, he was the vet in there that I went to for advice to help me with circumstances with other wrestlers. And he was wrestling the Chicago Bear Hug, Steve Michaels, one night, and he was supposed to go over. I had Jay Bradley winning, and because he was the vet, Steve Michaels was still young. I think he was just out of his rookie year. And somewhere during the course of that match, Jay Bradley decided that he was going to let Steve Michaels win via submission with his bear hug. He made Steve Michaels a superstar that night, and that's probably the only time I didn't blow a gasket when somebody did something they weren't supposed to do, because Jay Bradley understood the importance of making a star in our territory, in our company, right? Because everyone that was a star has been established and been around forever. Jay Bradley, Egotistical Fantastico, Vic Capri, Shogun, they've been around, 10 plus years here in Chicago. So he understood the importance of making a superstar. And And I can't tell you how impressed that I am that Jay Bradley allowed Steve Michaels to use his finisher, the bear hug, to make him submit, because that made Steve Michaels a star. Oh, it made him a star, because after that, Steve Michaels started getting bookings everywhere. And I'm sure I know you've interviewed him, but he'll tell you the same thing. Jay Bradley absolutely made him that night.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about going back to my episode with Steve Michaels, which you can listen to on all major podcasting platforms. Had to get the cheap plug in there.
Sure, man.
But yeah, no, when I had Steve Michaels on a couple weeks ago, he actually told that exact same story from his perspective. So, and he was extremely, and to this day, I know, extremely complimentary of Jay Bradley. Like, he actually, I don't know if you had a chance to listen, but he talked about how Jay Bradley basically helped him get in the door over at Ohio Valley Wrestling, where he's now kicking some serious butt over there.
Absolutely.
And actually, Jay Bradley's someone who, through seeing him at a few independent shows, and then his run on Impact Wrestling as Jay Bradley, and then the whole I think it was Aiden O'Shea gimmick where he was like Billy Corgan's bodyguard and stuff.
Right.
I became a fan of his and actually met him at, I think, the first Blitz show I went to. He's a real good dude. And Jay Bradley, if you're out there listening, please, I would love to have you on a future episode of my podcast here. So, but yeah, so what would you say, like, especially nowadays with wrestling in the pandemic era, where like a lot of shows are being put on with no crowds and stuff? It really made me think, and I want to get your opinion on this. It really put into perspective and made me think exactly how vital the crowd is to a wrestling show. And what, how, in your opinion, how much of a role does the crowd play in your shows?
Well, the crowd's the energy. I mean, if wrestlers know if they're getting over the way they need to get over by if they're getting booed or cheered. The worst thing that in front of a live audience that can happen to a wrestler is that they're quiet, because you're not getting the reaction that you need. If you're a heel, you need to make them want to see you lose. If you're a baby, you need to make them feel some emotional attachment to you that makes them want to cheer for you and see you win. Mm-hmm. So with no crowd there, I mean, it's really just going through the motions. And when you're just going through the motions and you're not telling a great story, because the psychology doesn't have to be there really, because there's nobody there. To me, it's just going through the motions. It's like watching guys practice, at the training center. It just, I don't know. I don't like it. I know the wrestlers don't like it, but yeah, the crowd is so integral. I can't even tell you that. I was telling you, when I took off the B mask, the crowd popped. I can't tell you the electricity I felt when the crowd cheered because I took a stupid helmet off my head. So it's absolutely 100% legit that you feed off that crowd. And I'll be happy when the crowd comes back. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't know how much of the current product you follow and stuff, but I know AEW just recently started letting fans back in the stands. And then you got, the WWE's doing the Thunderdome presentation, which is put, the virtual fans, which is similar like what the NBA's been doing with the bubble and stuff. So are you now completely out of the business, or are you involved in any way right now?
I'm completely out. I have been asked by many to come back and help out. I'm not feeling it right now, Dennis. I actually liked the last show for BCW before the pandemic happened. I was in the crowd and watching the show, and I enjoyed having a beer or two, sitting there as a fan. Mm-hmm. Watching these guys perform without having to watch it with a critical eye, like you do as the owner or the booker. Just being able to enjoy was really awesome. So I think that's where I'm at right now. Just gonna kind of bide my time. In this business, you never say never.
Right.
I'll get that itch one of these days, and who knows if I'll be a manager, ring announcing, referee, but who knows? I mean, I still love the sport, with all my heart. I really do. I respect the hell out of these wrestlers and how hard it is to be a wrestler. They, there's no off season in pro wrestling, man. You go year round.
Yep.
And on the indie scene, you're getting, a lot of these guys are getting paid $20, $30, $40, if that. Bookers are known to be shady and say, hey, the gate was light. Sorry, I don't have money for you tonight. That's just shady. But I right now, Dennis, I'm okay with being in the crowd. I'm gonna. I do want to get back to what one point you asked me what I enjoy the most about wrestling, and I said writing the stories. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you as I was thinking about it right now. Something else that I enjoyed thoroughly was taking guys that were outcast or sent away from another company, being told that you're never going to amount to anything, that you're no good, that give up the business. And I brought in a bunch of guys to BCW that were on that path of leaving the business, let's just say. And I just looked at them, and I'll name who they are. Big Jack Monahan, Mike Strong, Kid Fox, the Empire with Damian Tyler, Brian Alexander, and D'Angelo Steele. Just to name a few. There's a long list, but just to name them. And I just looked at them all. They're like, and I said, look, do you guys want the opportunity? And they said, yeah. I go, so I need you at practice. I need to see what you can do. And so I know how to book you guys. So I don't put you in over your head so you look like dog shit in the ring. I just want to make sure that you guys look the best that you can look in the ring. So I need to see what you can do. So, a handful of them came in and, showed me what they could do. And in my mind, started working. And, I'll give them all the credit in the world because they just took the ideas and they ran with them. But they busted their ass, and they actually main evented one of the shows, The Empire versus Jack Monahan, Kid Fox, and Mike Strong versus D'Angelo Steele, Damian Tyler, and Brian Alexander. So this is the first time they've ever main evented any one of those guys. And I'll be damned if they didn't give it everything they had. They tried so hard, and D'Angelo Steele ended up tearing his knee up, where he was laid out for 6 to 8 weeks. Kid Fox broke his orbital bone in his face, so he's still temporary, slightly blind in one eye from it. Wow. But it was that opportunity that they had, and they building up to it, to that main event, where it was a no holds barred main event. I mean, they really earned that spot, and that makes me happy and proud inside that those guys that were casted away and told that they suck and they won't accomplish anything, that their storyline got so over with the crowd that they actually main evented. And that, that really makes me happy, and I really love doing that for guys.
Awesome. So couple more things here, and then we'll probably wrap it up here.
Sure.
So what would you say was the best piece of advice you were ever given? And if you'd like to, share with my audience who gave you that advice, and if it's something that you still apply to your daily life to this day.
So yeah, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Hey baby. He looked at, we brought him in the Blitz, and he gave me a couple of great nuggets that we ran with. He said, if you don't promote your company within the four walls, that you're running, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So we looked at him like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, what's the name of your company? And we said, Pro Wrestling Blitz. He goes, where's the pro? Where's the wrestling? Where's the blitz? So we looked around and we realized all we had was one little banner with like our social media on it. And it wasn't on the ring. It wasn't on the turnbuckles. It wasn't on the big screen. And he's just like, he goes, not everybody here has been to your show month after month after month. You know, you got new people in here and they want to go home and tell somebody about it. And they don't remember what the name of the company was. So we took that, we made sure we branded everything after that. So that was for the company. The best advice he gave me for wrestling was, if you dress like the crowd, you belong in the crowd. You got to stand out. You got to look different. You have to separate yourself from the audience. And if you don't do that, you just may as well be part of the audience. So that's when I started wearing that red smoker's jacket. And
yes, I remember that very well.
You know, for a long time, I had a white scarf that I used to wear. I just started doing little things that were different than what people in the audience would do. And I've told that, to everybody, if, all my workers, the young guys, like, if you dress like the crowd, you belong in the crowd. Take your gimmick serious, take your gear serious, and really think about it. And, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, who would have figured? But yeah, he was the one.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times. Just very down to earth, very humble. And that's
yep.
So one thing that I was thinking of as you were talking about that, and it's kind of harkening back to an earlier part of our conversation. You'd probably mentioned earlier about like going to the last BCW show before the pandemic and just watching it as a fan. How different is it for someone? Because I don't think a lot of people that aren't involved in the business like really understand what the difference is. But how different is it to watch a show as a fan versus watching the show as like the booker, so to speak?
Yeah, well, it's way different because as the booker, if I was watching that as the booker, I probably would have been upset. There was some botches, and I wouldn't have called the wins and losses the way they went that night. For me, Big Jack Monahan is the Irish hero in Berwyn, and on St. Patrick's Day, weekend, he lost to some guy who's never been at BCW before. And, for me, that never would have happened with me. But, you're sitting there as a fan, you're just wondering, well, what's the next step? Is Jack Monahan on his way out? Is this guy who just beat our hero, is he coming back? Is he for real? You just watch things just differently. It's hard not to watch it with a critical eye because that's what I've been doing since 2001. But, a lot of the fans, they recognized me and they thought I was coming back and they thought I was going to be part of a run-in or a storyline or an angle. And I'm like, nope, just here to have a couple beers, guys. And, it's just funny. There was one guy in particular, and I don't know the fan's name, but there was one fan in particular. He would not take his eyes off of me because he just knew in his mind I was part of the storyline and I was going to run in and interfere and do something. And at the end of the night, he goes, "I'll be damned, you didn't move." I go, "I told you I wasn't involved." But yeah, it's definitely different, Dennis. When you know what's supposed to happen, and then when you're sitting there as a fan just soaking it in, right? There's a big difference. And like I always tell wrestling fans, because I hear it all the time. Can I go backstage? Can I go meet the guys? I'm like, you go backstage, you're going to ruin your image of pro wrestling because you're not going to like what you see back there. And I learned that actually the very hard way in an old NWA show at the UIC Pavilion. I wanted to go backstage so bad. And when I went back there, when I went back there, Big Van Vader is chatting with Ron Simmons, and Lex Luger is talking with Ric Flair, and they're fighting each other that night. And I'm like, wait, what the hell's going on? I was young. I was a believer. They don't like each other. Yeah, right. So just be careful about asking to go backstage, because you won't like what you see back there.
I never really thought about, I mean, what you said makes perfect sense, but I never even really would have taken that in consideration when I first started going to the shows. And had I ever gotten the chance to go backstage, I would have just been excited to see the guys, maybe get an autograph, shake a hand. Right. But I would have never even thought about it. That's a really good point, because it's like it, I mean, it kind of shatters that illusion for you and stuff. And I mean,
forever.
And I mean, it's pretty much, I think, common knowledge amongst the majority of the fan base and stuff nowadays what professional wrestling really is. I've got eventually he watches it with me on occasion, but eventually I'd love to start taking my son to the shows with me and stuff, and getting him into it. And if I want him to think that it's real, and I mean, and I want him to like have that, I want him to be entertained and just, be taken away into, a different world. And I want him to have that same feeling that I had when I first started to watch wrestling. And I mean, I definitely think you had that until that night and stuff, but it may have changed your perception, but it didn't make you, it didn't, I'm trying to think of the right way of saying this. It didn't it didn't lessen your love for the business, I would assume, correct?
So, no, not at all. And I have a great kayfabe story from when I was a kid.
Sure.
Again, it was at the UIC Pavilion. The NWA was merging with the UWF at the time. My favorite big man was Terry Gordy. As I was telling you, he had just got done wrestling Dr. Death Steve Williams that night at the UIC Pavilion. For those that are listening from Chicago, they got a parking garage that you could look, stare into the UIC Pavilion and watch the wrestlers come out of the dressing room, and you could scream and wave and So me and my uncle were the last two in the building because I was waiting to see Terry Gordy. That was my guy. So I waited and waited and waited, and my uncle was finally like, okay, we got to go. And there's nobody else coming out. So here comes Terry Gordy. Here comes Dr. Death Steve Williams. He was the good guy. And I'm like, hey, Steve, yeah. So behind him, about 15 steps behind him, is Terry Gordy. Now, they had just got done killing each other in the ring. So I go, oh, my God, Steve, watch out behind you. It's Terry Gordy. So they realize I'm a little kid. Dr. Death dropped his bag, turned around, and him and Gordy started fighting in the parking lot. Some guy, I don't know who it was, picked up their luggage and threw it in the car. And they fought all the way into their car. So I'm looking at my uncle like, they got in the same car. What the hell's going on? So I swear, and I rationalized this in my head, right? 2 weeks later, they became a tag team, Dr. Death and Terry Gordy. In my mind, it was my fault because I made them brawl into the car, and they talked it out in the car, and that's why they became a tag team.
Oh, dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That I can't, still to this day, cannot believe they started brawling.
That's awesome. I mean, and I think it's hearing a story like that just goes to show you just how talented those two were, because they saw you in the crowd and they're like, okay, what do we do? And just to do what they did on the fly, I mean, that's genius.
I told Jay Bradley that story, and Jay says that was kayfabe back then. It was real. You had to protect the business. Here he goes, trust me, they hated you afterwards. That's just like, really? They're like, yeah, you just made them brawl in a parking lot. You're a kid, so they got to protect the business. They because you're the future of person that's going to pay for a ticket. So he goes, trust me, when they got in the car, they were MFing you big time, Frankie. But Jay goes, but that's what professionals do. And I've told everyone that story. Al Snow, the Animal, Ric Flair. I've told everyone that story, and they all just nod their head. They're like, "Yep, that's exactly what they would have done." Yep. So it's like it's not even far fetched for the people that actually knew those guys.
Mm-hmm. So, last question for me is do you follow the current product at all?
Oh, that's a horrible question. I do watch AEW. I've tuned into the NWA a little bit because Billy Corgan and and I forgot to mention Resistance Pro. I was part of Resistance Pro too, but I know Billy Corgan quite well, so I do watch his product. But I have not watched the WWE in probably 3 months. I'm not a fan of their product. I'm not a fan of their storylines right now. That doesn't mean, and when I say that, people always take this the wrong way. That doesn't mean I'm anti WWE. The WWE and Vince McMahon, they do a lot of great things for a lot of people. I'm just not a fan of their Hollywood storylines, their Hollywood writers. I wish they would bring back people that, are in the business to write storylines. So I guess that's your answer. I watched AEW and some NWA, but I don't watch Impact. I don't watch WWE.
So wait, you mean to tell me you weren't a fan of Rey Mysterio losing an eye during a match?
Oh my goodness! Again, I didn't watch it, so I saw all the dirt sheet stuff, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me! Now Big Van Vader really lost his eye in Japan when he was wrestling Stan Hansen.
I watched that match, and yeah, that was pretty wicked.
That was gross, and he put his eye back in his skull. I mean.
Yep.
That's what it looks like, not what the WWE tried to portray. And you gotta, but it goes to what you were just saying is you want your kid to believe, right?
Yes.
So for me, if I had someone in my, like, all my kids are in their 20s now, but I mean, if I had a kid, I would have pretended like, oh my God, I can't believe Rey Mysterio just lost his eye. Just to help my kid, to help fool him into believing that it's real. No different than Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy. I would have played that. My uncles did that to me as a kid. And that's what made me believe. They all, my uncles, I love them all. God rest their soul. Most of them. I only have one left, but they always would just say, can you believe, they broke Dusty Rhodes' arm in the parking lot? That's just crazy. They jumped him 4-on-1, and they would just play with me as a kid, and damn it, if I didn't believe it, hook, line, and sinker, man.
All right, now I promise this is the last question. So you mentioned
it's okay, keep going.
So you mentioned you watch AEW. Right now, if you had to pick one or two guys that you would say you're a big fan of, who would they be and why?
Wow. I mean, it's hard not to say Chris Jericho. I mean, he just keeps reinventing himself. The Le Champion and the little bit of the bubbly, and
now the Demo God.
The guy just keeps on turning out a great product. The Demo God, yeah. The other one, I was such a huge fan of Kenny Omega, and I'm really disappointed with how they've used him in AEW. One other guy. You know what? I hate to say Johnny Moxley. It just sounds like I'm a WWE homer guy, but I do like with what they've done with Moxley, and show fans a little bit of his hardcore side. They have to go, they don't have to go too crazy, but a lot of people don't realize before he was Dean Ambrose that he was this crazy hardcore guy. And so a lot of people that just know him from the WWE days don't realize his past and, and how hardcore he was. So I like how AEW is using him and Jericho. Yeah, I mean, I just wish they would do more with Kenny Omega. To me, Kenny Omega is the best wrestler in the world, and they're doing a Vince McMahon and just holding him back and not letting him be him.
Alrighty then. Well,
hey, Frank, I don't know if you agree with that. Let me ask you, what AEW stars do you like right now?
Well, my two current favorites are Cody. Mm-hmm. In which, I think that was me reconnecting with you when you brought him in for a signing at the baseball game a couple of years ago.
Right.
It was really cool. He's been a favorite of mine. And then the other one, and I want you to get your opinion on this other guy here, but I'm a huge MJF guy.
See, I have not seen it yet. My brother says he's the ultimate heel, that he's got it, whatever it is. And I haven't seen it yet because you got to give me something in the ring to go with your gift of gab. There's no doubt he's got the gift of gab. I need to see something in the ring that tells me that when it's time to go, he can go. And I have not seen it yet. I don't know. Have you? Be honest. Have you?
I mean, I don't think I've seen like everything he can do, but I saw him. You mentioned AEW. My first and only AEW show I went to was the last one they did in LaSalle, and I think he was injured at the time, but I know he played a part in the battle royal they had that night.
Mm-hmm.
I was second row ringside for Revolution when he fought Cody, and I thought, he did played the typical heel role pretty well. I want to say I've seen glimpses of it in the ring, but I don't think we've seen the full potential yet, and I don't think it's going to be for a little while.
Correct.
And honestly, I'm okay with that because I don't want to see everything all at once. I want to wait.
Yep.
I want it to be built up and stuff. And I know he's fighting Moxley for the AEW title at All Out in a couple weeks, and
right.
I would have loved to have been, talking about how excited I am to be going to the show, but obviously that's not happening and stuff. But no, yeah. I would definitely say though, yeah, Cody and MJF are like probably like my two faves in AEW, and obviously you mentioned Jericho as well, and everything you basically said, I echo those sentiments as well. So
cool.
So, all right, well, Frankie, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And where can people get a hold of you?
Oh man, I'm on all social media. If you want to be pissed off politically, you can find me on Facebook. If you want to, if you want to find a more kosher Frankie Rodriguez, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Just my name, Frank Rodriguez. I think on Twitter I'm Lunchbox. That was my radio name, Lunchbox FR. But yeah, I'm not hard to find, and I'm very vocal, and I've got no problem giving you an opinion to a question. So if you want to ask away, feel free. I've got no problem giving you an answer. You may not like it, but you'll get one.
Awesome. All right, Frankie. Well, hey, thanks again, man, and you have a great night. Have a great weekend.
You do the same. Hey, just real quick, I want to say thank you to the BCW owners for believing in me when they did. Chuck, Tony, and Steve, you guys are awesome. You're class acts. And Dennis, thank you for the opportunity tonight. And remember, it's been your pleasure.
Yes, it has been my pleasure. All right. Thanks, Frankie.
Have a good one, man.
You too. Thanks again to Frank Rodriguez for taking time out of his day to share some great stories with me. I really enjoyed everything he had to say and getting his perspective on what it's like to not only watch a wrestling show as a fan, but also as a booker. As always, thank you to my best friend in the world, Andre Boyd, for all of the music that you hear during the show. And this week for my shout out, I just want to give a shout out to everybody that has taken the time out of his or her day to listen to an episode. It really means a lot to me to think that something that I'm just doing on the side, just sharing my love of professional wrestling as a fan, and you taking time out of your day to sit back and listen to an episode and that, sending me all the nice feedback and reaching out to me, and it really means a lot to me. So I just want to thank all of my audience for doing so. And on that note, everybody have a great day, have a great night, and I will see you in about a week with a new episode of What Do You Say with DDJ.